I'm Tabitha Bandy, and I'm here today at HIDS at Bodie Technology. Today we have Aaron Sweeney, the lab director at Bodie Technology, Major Todd Morris from East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office, District Attorney Hiller Moore from East Baton Rouge Parish, and Erica Sparacino from Louisiana State Police Crime Lab. She's the Forensic DNA Manager. We want to talk about how they have strengthened the fight against crime using advancement in forensic technology. So I know that at the onset of COVID-19, East Baton Rouge experienced an uptick in crime. Was this part of what motivated you all to come together, and how did you bring on board the other agencies and organizations to help?
Yeah, so actually before COVID, in the job that I have, I'm able to travel around the country and look at other district attorneys' offices to see what they're doing and how they do it. And prior to COVID, BJA was looking for prosecutor-led programs to give some grant money to. One was a Crime Gun Intelligence Center, and we visited the Denver Crime Gun Intelligence Center, which is associated with the laboratory there. And that's where I met that lab director and BJA, and they visited Baton Rouge and looked at the collaboration that we had at the time going, and they said, we think this would be a great place to start a prosecutor-led CJIC program there, knowing the collaboration we had. So that's really where it started, and then COVID hit, and everyone knows the world was turning on its head, but we picked it up again, and it's been in progress ever since then. The grant has now expired, but we have found that now it's so valuable to us that we have continued that grant. Everyone is working on it, and it's something that we know we cannot do without now, because this is what drives all of our cases. So what we began is a robust collection of shell casing, followed by DNA testing of the shells themselves. And we were able to then collaborate and see that although we had a outsourced sized number of homicides and shootings, that the vast majority of the shootings were really concentrated highly in areas and amongst people, and then group involved shootings. So we tried to break the larger number down into smaller parts to try to conquer the problem that we faced. And we have seen over the past 3 or 4 years that our numbers in homicides, shots fired, non-fatal shootings have gone down, and we're moving in the right direction, although not yet at pre-COVID numbers where we want to be. But we're seeing that the collaboration by the men and the women that are on the street that pick up the shell casings, that those small things that they're able to do with the DNA, and particularly with the cooperation we've had with Bodie Labs and others, that it has really paid dividends for us. So, some jurisdictions that may be listening, you can do this without a grant because you already have the people there working with your crime lab, working with the different departments, maybe even your university. We found our university, LSU, and others to be really big drivers and grant writers. The National Guard is also part of this. Probation Pro, every agency that we have, all the federal partners are all part of this. Also important to this is we not only do the research and look at the data, but we meet on a weekly basis to go over what happened the week before and where our needs and who's our trigger pullers and what do we want to be. We also have data that's collected through the Crime Strategies Unit, which is run through our office and National Guard counter-drug intelligence analysts. They're able to have MOUs that take data from all of the police reports, and they synthesize that, and they put out these reports that are extremely detailed as to what's happening where, on a block, in a family, in a community, what time is it, what day. We do that not only with homicide, but non-fatals, with shots fired, and we've expanded recently into fentanyl use and overdose use. So it's a better use of limited resources that we now have, and the idea is to hopefully focus only on the trigger pullers, not throw a wide net and try to get those that are causing trouble, move on to the next one, and select your cases.
All right, so what are some of the strategies and techniques that have had the greatest impact on cases in your all's jurisdiction?
Really, it's just a collaborative effort. We always have worked with our partners, federal, state, local, our crime lab partners, and it takes all of us doing our own specific tasks, but collectively communicating and talking about that. It takes the work of our intelligence personnel. It takes our narcotics division, who's been a huge part of our efforts here when we're going after our mid and upper level drug dealers that are getting a lot of guns when we run those search warrants. Our uniform patrol, our officers at Baton Rouge City Police Department on their traffic stops collecting guns. It was a whole approach using intelligence-driven information to identify the groups or gangs that are responsible for a lot of our shootings. And so we could focus our attention on those individuals. When you look at them, historically, you know, you have them involved in other crimes also too. And say it's a non-fatal shooting, and it's just not a homicide just because they made a bad shot. And so when we look at our numbers, Hilla mentioned our non-fatal shootings for our parish as a whole for this year, we're down 22%, which is a significant amount that helps us, you know, fight our crime, focusing on the groups that are responsible for the shootings and collecting every shell casing and entering it within NIBIN within 24 to 48 hours. Those NIBINs are uploaded to generate investigative leads to show how that shell casing is connected to other casings from crime scenes. And so that's been a huge success for us, being able to do it in almost real time and putting forth our investigative efforts from both agencies to identify those. How is this gun connected from the sheriff's office shooting to the Baton Rouge Police Department shooting, and what's the common denominator? And if you're not communicating and working every day with your partners, those opportunities are missed. And on the flip side of that, you have to have our Louisiana State Police Crime Lab, our crime lab partners, helping them prioritize and say, you know, this one, they're all important cases. We understand that, okay? But we can't expedite every case. And so when we talk with Hiller with a suspect and he looks at, you know, another prosecution they may have on this defendant, and we say, okay, this one's coming for a trial, this one needs to be a priority, and get him off the streets and give Hiller a prosecutable case, you know, from not only the information we gather, but from the DNA results from swabbing those cases and sending them off to Bodie to help us process.
We look at jail bookings twice a day. And we have an assistant DA that's familiar with the system and the process. She puts out a gun review on every gun case. And we're talking about 12 a day and also major crimes cases. And she does this thorough review through the form that we use. And it tells us, as a DA, immediately before the bond is set, this person has been involved with weapons before. And in this case, we need to follow up on NIBIN because we believe he's involved with other shootings. Also, this is a case where we need to make sure we swab the defendant, not only the defendant, say it's a car stop, but the other two that are in the car. Did someone claim ownership of the weapon? Did we ask them questions? Why would your DNA be on this gun? Have you touched it anytime recently? So all of those things are quickly assembled in a package before the defendant is able to bond out of jail, and that we're able to hold those that are necessary to be held. To follow up on that, in addition to that scientific work, we also have a crime strategies unit that looks at social media because these people do speak and talk. And we also are able, through a system that we employ with LSU, the university, we have 10 senior criminology students. They also listen not only to the social media, but jail phone calls that oftentimes we may miss a gun or miss a Glock switch. And they tell us in the jail phone call where to find it. And then the sheriff and the police follow up with further activity since then.
That's what I love, is that it's not just focused on the laboratory information that's provided. It's put together as a full story to build your case. So we've heard DA Moore speak to gun crimes, and we've heard Major Todd Morris reference drug crimes and also homicides. Erica, are there other case types that you're focusing on in the state to fight crime?
Yes, so we've had an uptick the last several years in homicides and sexual assault type cases. So that is really what we're focused on internally in the lab. A couple years ago, Hillary reached out to us and asked us, hey, can we meet and talk about outsourcing some casework? At that time, we were not in compliance with FBI QAS 17 standard, but we said, what can we do to help? And with his gun initiative, it has to do with CODIS eligibility, what type of cases we were able to ship off and send to Bodie. So we had, the guns had come to the lab already swabbed, or either were swabbed at the laboratory. We also had reference samples, some of which were processed. And so decisions were made with grant funding that was applied to outsource those cases to Bodie Technology to be able to move the gun type cases forward in our process, since we're really focusing on the homicides and rapes.
So what people don't always realize is that forensic testing, the resources are limited. So how do you prioritize which samples you send to the lab or you move forward with? Is it in any way based on what's CODIS eligible and not CODIS eligible?
To an extent, yes. We do have an evidence receiving policy, and depending on if it's a priority 1 type of case, which is an offense against a person, typically a homicide or a rape, and then a priority 2 type case, which is like a burglary or a theft or weapons. So we prioritize internally the homicides and the rapes. The oldest type of case to the newest is how we would typically triage casework. Obviously, we want to work the cases that are unknowns, and if we have a profile that is eligible to CODIS, to be able to put that into the database so we get a hit, so we can give that investigative lead to our local law enforcement agency so they can go and potentially get that person off the streets. So really, we're working more on a priority type of case request with the agencies due to our backlog. So if they have a case where there is a known suspect, because maybe it's a case that's going to court for prosecution, they need us to work something, and we have known suspect reference samples, we would prioritize that kind of case.
So Erin, we know that Bodie supports this program by directly working the cases. What else is Bodie doing in the background to try to help support programs like this?
Yeah, so Bodie is a service provider. We're here to serve our crime lab partners, our law enforcement partners. So whether that's taking backlog cases off the hands of the state labs so that they can focus on the priorities like Erica just mentioned, or R&D to advance technologies that will better meet the needs of what law enforcement needs right now. There's an increase in gun crimes nationwide. And so we're now focusing a lot of our R&D efforts to improve the technology in that area and be able to apply it to projects such as this. So in 2021, we launched a new proprietary Bodie extraction method designed for improving success rates from shell casings. And on this project now, we are seeing great success rates that we're happy to see. Over 90% of the cases coming here from DA Moore and Major Morris are yielding DNA. They're proceeding on for DNA testing rather than stopping at quant. And about 75% now are producing investigative information with comparable DNA profiles.
So it sounds like that the approaches that you've chosen have been very effective, but what challenges did you meet implementing these transformative actions, and how did you overcome those?
One of the challenges was explaining to our uniform patrol deputies and Baton Rouge City police officers, the importance of locating every shell casing. Because them, okay, I've got 1 or 2 or I got 3, and we know that a shot spotter said we had 20 rounds go off. Well, let's try to find all 20 rounds so we can make sure that we're swabbing each of those rounds for our best chance to get a profile that's going to help us and generate an investigative lead. And so we had to let them see the whole picture, because the uniform patrol person or uniform patrol deputy, they're going from one call to the next call. And then now we have them making sure that they spend a lot of time collecting all those shell casings, because it's vital to us, because the amount of investigative leads it generates. Just last year in 2023, all of our NIBIN entries generated 148 investigative leads. Okay, that's a lot of investigative leads where those shell casings are connected to another shooting. And so we've seen great results from that by focusing and collecting every shell casing. We have one person at the office that runs every ATF tress on every gun to make sure that's done immediately. All the NIBIN entries, test fires are done within 48 hours. And so that's crucial to help us generate that lead as quickly as we can. And once again, it's an approach that takes all of our partners.
Through the cooperation with NIBIN and DNA testing, we were able to solve last year 4 murders that we have never have had any understanding that this person was involved in the shooting. And it's because of the men and women on the street that maybe just found this one person in a traffic accident with a weapon, and they seized the weapon for whatever reason. We took that weapon and we traced it, we NIBIN'd it, we shot it, and lo and behold, that shell case came back to a murder. And that would never have been done, because that's a routine gun that is not involved with a felon. It's a regular person, but lo and behold, he's a killer, and you have all the evidence there. But for all of this together and adding the DNA on top is huge. And what Bodie has done with the new shell case testing for us has been, I learned about it from Tabitha. And we had 2 particular cases that we wanted to have this done for us, and they're very important. And it's worth it on those cases to seize those shells and send them to get the best chance you can. I think your rate is around 70%, whereas regular work in the lab may not be that high. And your extraction method is great. And Baton Rouge has solved one serial murder killer for us, which was had our city on edge, but for that technology.
That's a great segue into the next question. So we know that any type of technology to implement it is expensive. So how did you obtain funding to implement a lot of these programs?
Well, we fortunately had the city parish had some funds that we received from the COVID that we got to help offset all the struggles that our parishes and our counties and our states were having from COVID. And so the mayor's office, set aside, a certain amount of those dollars to help expedite the case because they saw the benefit and the need also too, because it's a community effort. It's a community issue that we're trying to deal with. And so to be able to take some of those funds that we were given from the federal government and be able to prioritize that, we're going to set aside $250,000 for testing, expedited testing with Bodie and focusing on our gun crimes, because our gun crimes and our non-fatals are drivers.
So Aaron, DA Moore spoke to the need for faster turnaround times and quicker processing. How has Bodie made any changes to support programs like this that are requesting faster turnaround times in their reporting and their processing?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And as DA Moore said, as they see more success, there's more demand. The more success we see, there is more demand, and there's an expectation of a faster turnaround time in order for this to be effective. So that's something that we've been focusing on in increasing our capacity. So kind of twofold. You mentioned analyst positions, and there's a lot of training that goes into that. So we've been focused on adding more analysts and more capacity to our lab, and also working on our process improvements to make this a higher throughput process. As we brought this online, it was a very specialized technology. It's a manual, tedious process to get these kinds of success rates. And now we're focused on trying to make this a higher throughput process, a more affordable process with a quick turnaround time so that we can expand this testing and still meet the turnaround time expectations.
I also think that as a nation and then as a particular city and state, I'm not sure that we've yet made a priority public safety. So things are not like they used to be where you could pay a little money for dust and there was a fingerprint when DNA was not around. It was easy, it was simple. Now things have become more complicated, and not only in the DNA realm or the shell casing realm, but cell phone download, body camera. All of this has increased the expense for us to sufficiently arrest and prosecute people that are causing harm to the community. And unless and until we're able to raise the funds or seek public safety first, either as your city or your state or United States, to make it a political priority, we're going to be in this situation. It's not going to get any better. So I think we have to reprioritize what we're thinking. It's just like the fentanyl increase that we're seeing. Our fentanyl deaths triple our gun charges. Has it been made a public priority or a public health issue? It's sort of on the line with that. So I think the more you pay attention to an issue, particularly DNA and cell phones and others like this, it's going to continue to be an issue. And we have to, when we talk about funding, everyone needs money for anything that there is, but I think this should be a priority.
I don't know if any of the cases have closed that have been involved in this collaboration, but is there any one particular case that sticks out that's been a success through this program? I know you said that through the guns, it's led you to 4 homicide suspects.
Those homicides were last year, so we're still waiting for that to go through the pipeline. But just the regular gun cases that we prioritize to send to Bodie, it's information that we would not have had before, that we couldn't move forward one way or the other. And when the DNA came back in very few cases, there was nothing that could be done. Those cases were resolved in the appropriate manner based on the other evidence. Those that came back with DNA, and it's this defendant's DNA, when he said, "I've never touched the gun," that's a whole different case. He pleads guilty or goes to trial and faces the consequence. So just having the information, look, it also helps a defendant. If it's not his DNA, it's not his DNA. And our job is to be fair to everyone. And so it not only affects law enforcement and the public and prosecutors, but defense lawyers and the community in general. So I think it's just necessary both ways.
Okay, so what's next for the state of Louisiana and East Baton Rouge Parish? What further advancements, technologies are you looking at? I know you mentioned fentanyl is a focus area. Is there anything else?
We are we are, because of the number of gun crimes, we are trying to open a gun court, as I mentioned. And so I think that's our next step. How can we fund that program from the beginning? How can we make sure that we have DNA testing, cell phone downloads to support conviction? I mean, the turnaround time is going to have to be quick, and it's going to be difficult on top of the burden that we already have. But I think people are really getting tired of the violence and the gun violence. I mean, we see it all over the place. And it's a next step that we're going to take. And hopefully with the partnerships that we have here, we'll expand. And it's going to all be about data and the numbers that we see or don't see. And then look at the recidivism rate. Who's coming back after being treated or being convicted will be a telltale sign.
So one of the things at the crime lab that we've been dealing with is sexual assault kits, and how can we improve and make that process even more efficient. So right now we have our serologists or our screeners that screen them, and they will actually take the cases into the lab to extract them. There's been a movement of kind of going away from presumptive testing and testing all the items on the front end and making determinations at quant. So our current captain at the crime lab right now, we just had a collaborative group effort of all of the directors of all the crime laboratories in Louisiana come together to talk about how are they processing sexual assault kits, what are the differences in how we're handling that from crime lab to crime lab, and how can we maybe come together and do it more of the same, and talk about the methods that we're having in place at our laboratories to be more efficient. Also, there's a sexual assault kit tracking program, and that's new to our state with the current legislation that just passed last year. But other new technologies that are on the horizon is rapid DNA with crime scene. And I know that Major Morris can speak more to the booking rapid.
Yeah, no, I've been real excited about Rapid DNA, and we implemented the first station in the country at Rapid DNA at the time of booking and collected that. But I've been working with the State Police Crime Lab on an investigative lead project involving Rapid DNA, and I just really think that's going to help benefit us in certain cases to be able to generate a profile from Rapid DNA within 90 minutes to help generate an investigative lead. And is it a solve all? No, but I think it's another tool with technology that we got to utilize, though, for certain cases to be able to help us generate that lead within 90 minutes to solve that crime quicker. And that's what it's all about, because we know if we identify that individual, we can make a good case for Hiller. He's going to be able to prosecute that case, get an invasion. We get that individual off the streets much quicker. And we talk about, metrics and data driven, and that's going to save money. We look at, well, it's always about funds. We talk about funding. And the quicker we can identify a suspect, get that individual off the streets, it saves money from the aspect from the uniform patrol guy to a victim of the crime, to the prosecution time, to the amount of time wear and tear on a vehicle, dispatch time at the crime lab. I mean, you look at all the totality of that, and we look at cost-saving measures in the end, and we think Rapid will be able to help with that, and just identify that individual much more quickly.
Do you think that it will reduce the number of samples that you'll have to send for the more traditional processing?
Well, we've discussed it. We're still going to collect 2 swabs, okay? But the key is the time involved.
Right.
Hiller needs it, within maybe 6 months for a trial, okay? If we use it as an investigative lead within 90 minutes or that day that we're working a major crime to lead us to that individual, get him off the street, and the crime lab is not pressured, hey, I'm not calling Erica, hey, I really need this ASAP now. Now we have several months to get it done and processed because we had the rapid hit first. It generated an investigative lead, and now the traditional DNA can still be processed, but there's not the pressure from the crime lab thinking, oh my gosh, now I've got to put this in line. Todd just asked me for another one. Now he wants this one processed, So I think it's going to benefit collectively as a whole from that.
So I think that, I think it allows him probable cause
Right.
for an arrest warrant, that would be basis for an arrest to put someone in jail. And then I know now I have one that is viable that I can ask the crime lab for beyond a reasonable doubt. I need your testing. And so I think it's going to narrow the focus down on what we want and what we need.
Right. And for the 3 of us that have worked in a laboratory, although prioritization is definitely necessary for public safety at this point in time, because we haven't had the access to 90 minutes and rapid technology, we do know that prioritizing and pulling one case out, it does impact your efficiency. So it will help and assist in that way as well, do you think?
Yeah, I do think that whenever you have a case that needs to be prioritized, it's up to the supervisors. They triage it to who's going in our case work cycle appropriately. And so you're taking one from the back and putting it to the front, but it's all about communication and keeping it organized. If you keep doing these one-offs on the side, it can kind of disrupt the process. So as long as we keep the lines of communication open, we're able to keep it kind of organized within our laboratory process and move it right along with the rest of the train, we can hopefully get results in a more timely fashion.
Erin, you mentioned Bodie extraction, which is the process that Bodie uses on fired shell casings, and it also uses it on rootless hairs. Could you tell us a little bit more about that process and what changes were made to increase the success on these sample types?
Sure. Yeah, we brought this procedure online in 2021, but it wasn't a completely new procedure. A lot of the research that went into it was actually first used on Bodie's proprietary bone extraction that we've been using since our testing in the World Trade Center. And really, this extraction method focuses on improved recovery of the more degraded, shorter fragment DNA. So we recover more of that in prior methods would have been washed away. And that's coupled on the spent shell casing specifically, it's coupled with a specialized sampling method that goes into the extraction. So we're using the ATF method, which is the rinse and swab method. And that's where the entire shell casing is rinsed with a buffer that binds the metal ions that would normally degrade the DNA further. So by binding those, it increases our recovery. It reduces the further degradation and inhibition in the process. So we use this rinse and swab method where the entire rinse and then a swab of the casing is then put into our Bodie extraction. And like I said, in that method, we're able to recover more of the degraded DNA fragments.
So Erin, with these changes in the process, how has it impacted the success rate on these sample types?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've seen a really increased success rate since going online with this method. Before we had this method online, we weren't often recommending that this sample type even be tested, just knowing that the likelihood of success was quite low. But our validation showed that we're getting 10 times the DNA recovery now with this method. And what we've seen since being online with this procedure in real casework for the past couple of years is that we're getting CODIS eligible profiles from about 50% of the cases, or comparable DNA profiles. And when more samples can be submitted, it really increases the chance of success. On cases that have had at least 5 shell casings submitted, our success rate of obtaining a CODIS eligible profile has been about 90%.
So Erica, we know that CODIS eligible profiles, there's no need for a suspect standard or a person of interest standard for comparison. Does the collaboration work to help get you those persons of interest reference DNA standards to compare to those cases that are not eligible for CODIS?
Yes, absolutely, especially with the gun initiative and the program that we did with the outsourcing of the cases that Hiller mentioned earlier. When it comes to CODIS eligibility, there are certain criteria that have to be met for profiles obtained from a weapon or a firearm. The eligibility is critical, and so you can't always put those profiles after you swab a gun into CODIS. So if you have a known suspect and submitting those reference samples to the laboratory or to the outsourced lab, we're able to obtain a profile from the gun or the cartridge casings, and then you have the reference swabs, and then you can make that comparison. And they're either included or excluded depending on the yield and the results of the DNA testing.
One thing I'd like to expand on, what's very important about the Crime Strategy Unit report that Sonia sends out, she's phenomenal, and she's the Louisiana National Guard personnel, and they do a great job. But we take that report and we make sure it goes to our uniform patrol, okay? We just don't keep it from the administration standpoint or for our captain's standpoint. It goes to every deputy, because we want them to look at that and see in their specific areas at the specific times what's taking place, and allow them to, because you won't buy in from everybody in your agency, and they want to feel a part of something, okay? The administrator, oh, just go to this area because we said so. That's not the way it works, This is a team approach, and it's important for us to disseminate that out to every deputy so they can look at themselves. They look at the graphs, they look at the charts, they look at the hot spots, and that is vital for them too to embrace their areas where they know these individuals too, because they know the areas where they're having these shots fired at, and so get them to buy in, to focus their attention that more so than just being directive there by their captain or their lieutenant. Hey, we want to focus here today, and get the initiatives from them themselves, and it's really important to do that.
And there's always a data-driven police officer or deputy per squad. That's the one that you really want to get into, and then when he does something really good, then the others catch on. But I think what we've also learned from that is that we do a really bad job of telling officers because of the business we're in. They did a great job, and hey, we appreciate it. So we're now trying to follow up with emails to the individual officers that, hey, that one gun that you took off that non-felon person, we shot it, and that shell case came back to this. You should be proud that you did your job, and we send that along to the chief as well. So that person has a pick me up and says, I want to go get it and do even more, because it is a tough business that we're in now, and getting that recognition is very helpful.
It helps to motivate them that they're impacting beyond that one case, that they're impacting the entire mission.
100% correct. And it's really about buy-in, okay? And they see the results of them swabbing that. They see the results of just collecting that gun from a traffic stop, okay? And then we get them the NIBIN report and to show them, hey, this gun connected to 1, 2, 3, 4 cases just by you initiating a traffic stop, whatever probable cause led to that, and allowed them to be able to seize that appropriately, and then us to be able to shoot it, fire it, put it in a NIBIN, and they see those results, and it's important that they know that,
Right.
On the back end.
Right. So we've talked about looking at other agencies and the intelligence program that they had set up, and then the availability of funding that it motivated the collaboration. But was there a particular case that maybe sparked you to want to come together and start addressing crimes this way?
Yes. So going back to visiting Denver and the work that they were doing with shell casing, and the research that was out there at the time wasn't really promising for the yield, but they were excited about it, and we were mindful of that. And then I recall Baton Rouge had a serial killer prior to the COVID outbreak, and there were homeless people that were being killed. And I think the Baton Rouge police had 3 murders, and the sheriff's office had 1, all within 2 weeks. And you can imagine, and these were multiple shell cases that are used at these different crime scenes. You can imagine Baton Rouge was on alert. Also, particularly the African-American community, because they were all black victims. And we had no idea at the time who was doing this. So we were really on high alert. I recall one murder that occurred right outside of the LSU campus, where a person was gunned down with multiple shell casings. And there was this one technician, one crime scene detective that was working the case. And I had, prior life, had been a crime scene investigator, and she was using one swab to swab multiple casings that were in different fields of shell casings. And I asked her, why were you doing this? She had read the same articles and said, I think I have a better chance of receiving a DNA sample if I do it this way. So we said, okay. And then eventually that gets sent to the crime lab, and the crime lab, lo and behold, comes up with a DNA profile. We've never had that before. And here we have a DNA profile. And then right after that, we checked the cameras around LSU, and it led us to a car. Then that individual did something with that car that was captured on video. We ran the DNA, got his sample. He had a warrant out for him. We took a sample of his DNA because of the warrant he had, not for a murder, but for another matter that was minor. Then matching the 2 up, it's his DNA, and you have a serial killer. So that's when, at that point, we said, this is really great technology, but again, the yield is very low. And then fast forward to meeting you, and when you came to Baton Rouge and told us about the new extraction method a few years ago, we were really excited because we had 2 cases at the time that were pending that were horrendous cases where the victim or defendant really didn't know each other. It's a 4-year-old and a college co-ed killed at different times. And that's when it really let us know that, hey, we have a partner that we can use, that the yield could be 70 to 90% if we're able to collect it correctly. So we quickly then disseminated that information to the sheriff and the Baton Rouge police that, hey, on certain cases, we may want to keep shell casings aside, collect them separately under your direction, send them to the lab, and we may get a much better result. Now, although a DNA on a shell casing won't say that that person pulled the trigger, it's an investigative lead, it's credible information, and someone has to answer questions if you're able to run them in CODIS and get their DNA. So from that point on, we have really been interested in this process. And unfortunately, we would love to send every shell casing here to Bodie to do that, but can't at this time. Hopefully that will become easier and more cost effective, but it is valuable for us in particular cases.
Yeah, so we don't have that technology online yet at our laboratory due to the backlog and trying to hire the personnel and train them to be able to do the basic DNA casework. But with Hiller's Gun Initiative, what we've been able to do is when guns are swabbed, we had those swabs from weapons themselves. We've already had the reference samples in-house. And with this initiative and collaborative effort, we've come together to talk about what cases can we send for his agency along with East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office. And so we came together as a group to be able to outsource those cases of swaps from guns. And if we had any cases in the meantime, the cartridge cases was also then sent to Bodie Technology.
Yeah, and that was great to have your site visit and build that relationship further with your lab, because then that's now allowed us to expand and be able to take more cases as you need. We said it's all about the collaboration, so that's how it started, and now it's just the beginning, I'm sure.